What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Starlight Beacon. This is the official review of The Bad Batch, episode 1. May the 4th be with you all. It is also my birthday, and I want to say thank you to everyone who wished me a happy birthday on Twitter, on the Discord, on, texting me, calling me, whatever. Everywhere, anywhere that you try to reach out to me, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Um, but yeah, man, let's get into it. It's been a wonderful. I love this show. This is a great first episode. Um, all the new characters. Omega was a wonderful addition. Like I instantly latched onto that character, which is a good thing. They've learned from the Clone Wars and Rebels how to have a strong start to these series, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I think this is probably one of the best first episodes in one of these animated shows that I can recall. And the Soho, what's going on? Welcome. Thank you for joining. I think I said your name right. Right? Endless So? Did I read that right? Anyways. Sorry if I butchered that. But yeah, let's get into this thing a little bit. So let's talk about the opening. Because the graphic starts out with the Clone Wars introduction, and a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, this is basically Clone Wars season 8," and it was cool to see that graphic, and then it burned away into the Bad Batch logo, which was kind of cool. It's kind of like the Phoenix, being reforged being reborn in fire. So it's kind of like a metaphor for the Republic and the Jedi Order and the Clone Wars show in general. You know, the old ways being burned away and the new world rising, which is the Empire. I'm maybe reading a little bit too much into it, but that's how I interpreted it. So I like that introduction. So right off the bat, it was great. Then we get into it a little bit more with an introduction into was it my man Tom Kane who voiced and did the voiceover for the Clone Wars. It was good to hear his voice again. And we get some animated sequences from Revenge of the Sith. That was awesome. Love seeing Revenge of the Sith again, man. That's one of my favorite movies in the Star Wars franchise, and it was cool that that Palpatine sequence with Anakin cutting down the droids was like shot for shot copy from the Revenge of the Sith. That was awesome. There's actually it's a GIF, and I put it in the Den of Nerds Discord. I'm going to put it in our Discord as well. Of the shot-by-shot comparison from the animation of that scene and the live-action version from Revenge of the Sith. And then, instantly, I'm kind of like, dang, man, we got to get another Order 66 sequence, man. And then, but it wasn't as bad as like the other ones. Like I still feel like Revenge of the Sith is probably like the best iteration, but just because you get the whole kind of sort of viewpoint of Order 66 being executed across the galaxy. Also, Order 66 in season 7 of the Clone Wars, that was very emotional, like roller coaster, man, because that was like a more of an interpersonal thing. I got to talk about that a little bit because for me, the impact that Order 66 scene had, in season 7 of the Clone Wars was different for me because unlike in Revenge of the Sith, we hadn't really got to know the Jedi Masters that are cut down and that we see being murdered and massacred, and it's still an emotional scene, still an emotionally impactful scene. But because of the Clone Wars, we get to know these Jedi a lot more. Like, they do a really good job on the Clone Wars of actually featuring all of the Jedi that we see get killed during Order 66 in Revenge of the Sith. And because of that, we get to know them. We get to kind of sort of learn about their personalities and, just the inner workings of who they are. And so when we have to experience that again, it's kind of like, yo, not all of those Jedi I like, because some of them are just like jerks, kind of, sort of. The way they treat Anakin and the way they treat Ahsoka, but it's still emotionally impactful. And then when you watch Revenge of the Sith again, with that knowledge, you're kind of like, yo, dang man, that's kind of rough, because like I know you more now, you know what I'm saying? Thanks to the Clone Wars, I know these Jedi a little bit better. um but there were the rumors that Caleb Dune, aka Kanan Jarrus, was going to appear in this series. And so as soon as we see Depa Balaba, I'm like, oh man, I gotta see this Order 66 scene. And there's a Clone Wars or no, a comic book series that kind of illustrates um, the Kanan Jarrus, Caleb Dune Order 66 sequence with him and Depa Balaba, which a lot of people are talking about because this episode actually retcons that significantly. It's still essentially the same, kind of sort of the same, but it is significantly different than what happened in the comic book series. But I do appreciate the fact that we got to see it in animation. Freddie Prinze Jr. voicing young Caleb was very strange for me. I'm not gonna lie, like that kind of took me out of it a little bit, because I'm like, yo, this grown man voicing this child. I'm like, eee. Like, yo, you couldn't modify his voice a little bit, like, turn it up a few octaves to make it sound a little younger, or probably get maybe a young person to come in and then just credit both of them for the character. I don't know, that's a nitpick for me. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was noticeable, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, let me know how y'all thought about Freddie Prinze Jr., because if you've watched Rebels, like, I love Kanan Jarrus. Like, he's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. So it was cool to see, and I don't think we're going to see Caleb anymore in this series. So I understand why they got Freddie Prinze, because this is probably the only time we'll see him in that episode, and probably in this series. Who we got in the chat? Ma, what's going on? My mom's in the chat watching. May the fourth be with you. Thank you. Whitney, what's happening? Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie. Excited to hear your take, man. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Yeah, it was odd. Definitely gave me Ted vibes. Yeah. Yeah, so that was the only thing. Even though I did like the interaction between Caleb and the Bad Batch, and their introduction was cool. It was, reminded me of the introduction from season 7 of the Clone Wars. And this in many ways did feel like season 8 of the Clone Wars, but it's no longer the Clone Wars because it's over. So now we're just following some returning characters from that sequence. But I like that they have returned to that style of animation or CG. I like the voiceover with, I believe it's Tom Kane that does the voiceover. I love that element. I hope they keep that throughout the show, because I always appreciated that about the Clone Wars. I thought it was like a kind of a unique thing and different to Star Wars, but it's a welcome change. And then I got to point out that Wrecker, his interactions with kids is like absolutely adorable. And then you see that he is like a kid at heart, but he's just this big hulking mass of like carnage. And then he has the soft side, which I think is amazing. And we're gonna get into that once we get to the Omega stuff, because I thought that was amazing. Yeah, are we loading here? Okay, I don't know if I was lagging or not. Yeah, Carol, what's happening? Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching and tuning in. So the next thing is, Order 66 happens, and Depa Balaba, what does she use? Form 3, Form 4? But I like to see that on full display, like how acrobatic she is, and she put up quite a defense. And her, yelling out to Kanan to run, like, yo, that was emotional. That got me. I was like, dang, man, because I know how, because of Rebels, I know their connection and how much he respected and admired her as a master. So it was very emotional to hear her basically telling him to run for his life as she's getting gunned down by her own clones. And it's like, that's just a rough thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are soldiers that you've, fought and bled with, and then all of a sudden with one order they turn on you. Like, I don't think you can ever underestimate the emotional toll that has to take on the Jedi, especially the survivors of Order 66. I hope that the Kenobi series touches on that a little bit, like not get too deep into it, but I think that them talking about the emotional impact and the emotional toll that the betrayal had on him, and Anakin's fall and all of that. I hope they touch on that a bit in the Kenobi series. But anyways, moving on, you know, the Bad Batch, Clone Force 99, they aren't affected by Order 66 minus Hunter for whatever reason, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit more explanation as to why his mutation didn't affect his inhibitor chip, and maybe we won't, but like it didn't have his genetic changes. What do they call it? Like, it's not a change, it's not a defect, they don't call it a defect. Favorable defects, I think is what they call them. Allowed him basically to allows them to disobey orders and kind of do their own thing, and that's the unique thing about Clone Force 99. But it's interesting that it didn't, those favorable mutations didn't actually affect his character, and he still had to follow Order 66. And he does that thing, he says that line where good soldiers follow orders, which is what 5 was repeating in the Clone Wars, and also what Rex was repeating in that sequence with Ahsoka. Let's see what. Yes, Whitney says that is exactly what I would love to see from the Kenobi series as well. Seeing different perspectives of Order 66 is amazing. Yes, it is. And with the added context that these shows have given us in the comic book series and the novelizations that take place during that time period, and even Fallen Order. Fallen Order is also another one. Man, that was a really emotional sequence, because you have to play it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to actually, you're in it. And I gotta, not to get too sidetracked here, but the Fallen Order, the way they built the relationship between Cal Kestis and his master, Gerald T'Pol, that was interesting. And, so by the time we do get that Order 66 sequence in the video game, it is a very emotional sequence, man. And they kind of build up the anticipation for it, because you're in like a training room, and then one of the clones fires at you, but it's not a live round. Like, it's like and like, I remember I jumped. I was like, oh, because I knew it was about to happen. I knew the Order 66 stuff was coming. And so like, that was like a cool thing the developers did, was like, they had that little thing, but he was just, trying to mimic a battlefield distraction. He was just trying to, have a on the fly change, something that you would experience on the battlefield. So like, that was cool. But Hunter, or not Hunter, but it wasn't Hunter, I'm sorry, Crosshair, I think that's his name, is the one who is following Order 66, not Hunter. Hunter is the leader. I misspoke there. But he is, hell-bent on following Order 66. And he and Hunter go to find Caleb, and we have that whole sequence. I like the interaction that Hunter and Caleb have. He's trying to get him to like say, look, I don't know what's happening. I'm in the dark as much as you are. I don't know what's going on. Like, I heard the order, I don't know what it's about. Let's figure this out. But like, as we know, they're programmed, and then we get that reveal for those who are pretty much new to the franchise and to the Order 66 dynamic. Like, this is something that was programmed into the clones at birth. So as soon as the order was given, there was no way they were ever going to deviate from that, minus the few clones that were able to remove their chips. And then of course the Bad Batch. Then the next thing we go, Star Wars MCU OG, what's happening? Thank you for joining. The next thing that we get following is they head back to Camino, and the V-wings come in and kind of intercept them, and they're asking for their clearance codes and what have you. They're following like very strict Imperial protocol now. I thought that was a cool change because the Republic wasn't as strict in to rules and protocols as the Empire is, of course. Um, and we see they land, they give their clearance codes, they land on the planet, and then we see the body of a Jedi, which I think is actually Shakti, and her lightsaber falls to the ground, and I feel like um, there's been some different versions of her death. I mean, George Lucas had like two different versions of her death. One was General Grievous killing her on the ship, but that scene was a deleted scene, so that never actually made the final cut. So that's never been canon. The other scene was with Anakin actually killing her in the temple, and I think that was in a vision that Yoda had in the Clone Wars. I think we see that play out during what was that, season 6? We see that. So, but we don't really know. It's never been clearly defined how she died. And what I think happened, my headcanon right now, until they explain any different, was that she was on her way to Coruscant to help save the Chancellor. Mission accomplished. And after Anakin and Obi-Wan save the Chancellor, and everyone is basically heading back to their assignments, she's probably en route back to Kamino when Order 66 is given, which is why they're probably removing her body from the shuttle that she was on in transit, or maybe she had even gotten to Kamino, which is why Kamino was on lockdown. But I think, to my knowledge, she's the only Jedi stationed at Kamino, so maybe that's why they were locked down. Maybe she had already gone back to Kamino by the time Order 6 is given, which puts her in a very precarious situation. There's no way she's getting out of there alive because she's literally in their headquarters. So, yes, okay, so now we have a new Jedi named for that scene. Oh, show. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think it has to be Shakti. I mean, Shakti is the only one that makes sense to be on Kamino. And maybe they'll tell us explicitly who it was at some point in the future, but until then, my headcanon is that it was Shakti, and that's that on that. Moving on, we get Tarkin, who's still an admiral at this point. He's not a Moff yet, so I'm pretty sure we'll see a lot of that. And then we get another perspective of the transition from the Empire using the clones to what are they not commissioned, but basically going to recruited soldiers. What is it, conscription? Is that what he said? Conscription soldiers, a conscription army, a traditional standing army, if you will. And it's all a financial play. Like, I mean, the clones have to be expensive. Yes, they're superior soldiers, but Tarkin is looking to cut costs, and we know that Tarkin's not a huge fan of clones. So I think, of course, he's the one that's going to make the call on that, and the Emperor is going to, agree with whatever he decides is the best course of action. And then we get the introduction of Omega, which, for me, I fell in love with Omega immediately, and I think it was more or less the scene where they're in the cafeteria and they start the fight, or she starts the fight. Well, not really. She didn't start the fight. She kind of sort of, they instigated, and she basically didn't back down. And then, Wrecker, of course, is like, oh, I like this girl. And I thought that was awesome. That was a cool moment. But yeah, man, I am on board with this character. I'm very much looking forward to see what it is she brings to the table and what they do with this character. She is like, she was, I mean, that's cool. That was a cool thing. And her dynamic and her interactions with the Bad Batch was phenomenal. I buy the relationship, well, not only between the Bad Batch, because I'm pretty much bought into that during season 7 of the Clone Wars, but the interactions between her and the rest of the forces was like really good. Like that was some really good dialogue, and like you can tell she is supposed to be a part of the Bad Batch, which is revealed in the show later. And so that was a cool aspect because Lamasu, I think that's her name, Lamasu, and the Prime Minister, they're having that conversation later in the episode, and it is revealed that Echo, of course, as we know, was not a part of the original Bad Batch team, but they mentioned that there are 5 members, and because of that, you know, if you're paying attention, you realize that yes, Omega is the 5th and not Echo, because he's not, he's a regular clone. He just has been modified and is now a part of that team. So that was all awesome. And I want to get into some things about Omega really quick, because there's been a lot of speculation on the internet that she's force sensitive. And while I'm not opposed to that at all, and I think that could also be the case, I gotta remind everyone that Hunter has heightened senses. So all of his senses are heightened, and he can perceive well, it it almost feels like Hunter at times is force sensitive because of his heightened senses. I think Omega has a heightened level of perception, which makes it feel like she can almost sense things about a person or something that's going to happen. But that can either be done through the force or through a modification, just like Hunter is and just like the rest of the team. So for me, I'm not opposed to her being force sensitive at all. Like I'm okay with either, but it also would make sense that her modification is that she just has a heightened level of perception. So she's able to perceive the emotions and feelings and uh, what have you of other beings, and definitely the other members of the Bad Batch team. That whole conversation that she has with Crosshair while they're in the brig is kind of like, I think that was the indicator for a lot of people to say, hey, is she force sensitive? Which I can totally buy into, but at the same time, I'm like, that could also just be a genetic modification. But yeah, let me know what you all think about that. Endless Soho says she's force sensitive, no doubt in my mind. Like I said, I don't disagree, and I wouldn't be opposed to her being force sensitive, but I can also believe that she's not. I can see that just being a genetic modification. I'm pretty sure we'll get an explanation at the end. And for me, the way the character is set up and the way they've kind of sort of positioned everything, I'm okay with her being force sensitive, but I'm also okay with her not, and it just being a genetic modification. Either way, it makes her a very unique character and a very unique asset to the Kaminoans and possibly to the Empire. Because can you imagine like having a clone, like imagine the clone troopers having a heightened level of perception. Like you wouldn't be able to ambush a soldier that can perceive things quicker than the average person. Like it almost gives them a level of like imagine like on the battlefield, if you could perceive an ambush, or you could that level of foresight would give you like such an edge in combat that like you would almost be unbeatable, especially in an army full of them. So I can see why the Kaminoans have such a high value on her and are very protective of her. And with the intentions of the Empire at this point being masked, and with Tarkin basically saying like, look, the way we see it, your contracts are with the Republic, and the Republic no longer exists. We, as the Empire, are looking to renegotiate what it is and reevaluate how valuable these clones are. Them having that asset that is Omega is an ace in the hole, and that's something if the Empire is looking to part ways with the Kaminoans, they definitely wouldn't want her falling into their hands. I think that kind of sort of eliminates any of the speculation that she is somehow a Palpatine clone or something like that, because a lot of that was like circulating on the internet. We had a lot of theories circulating as to who or what she may or may not be related to. I would almost bet that, you know, given what we've learned in this first episode, that she isn't related to anyone. She has no, like, she is a creation of the Kaminoans. And that's it. Like, I don't think she has any, but, you know, what she could, depending on who she is aligned with, it could totally reshape the future of the galaxy. And I think that's inevitably what this show is going to be about. And the fate of the Bad Batch is really tied to her now at this point, which I think is cool. I think that's a great aspect. I'm looking forward to episode 2, which comes out Friday, and I'll be doing a episode review of that as well. But man, I'm looking forward to this series, man. This is a exciting first start. I think this is easily like a 8 or 8.5, probably for me. Strong, maybe close to a 9. I think I'll close to a 9, definitely. But yeah, so anyways, Coop Daddy Yoda sending greetings to everybody and more birthday greetings to you. Yes, thank you for everybody who wished me happy birthday. It's been a great birthday so far, full of Star Wars and full of just love and appreciation. And you know, I appreciate everything, all the messages and all the calls and all that. That's been wonderful. So yeah, thank you. 10 of 10 from the beginning. In Filoni we trust. I hear you, and especially in Filoni we trust. We definitely trust Dave Filoni. And who is was it David Rao? Was he a co-writer, or whoever's the helping with this series? He's definitely somebody we want to keep an eye on. Like, we'll follow his career with great interest, as Palpatine would say, because, you know, I don't know how much creative control he has had with this series, but he is definitely someone, based on this episode, who I think has a strong future in the Star Wars franchise as a storyteller and as a creator. So I think the success of this franchise, of this series, is going to help boost him to stardom within the Star Wars community. And you know, we're definitely, as fans, looking for more creative talent like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and the Claudia Grays and everyone else who's created amazing Star Wars content. We want more of them involved in this franchise, creating great content for us to consume. But all right, so where are we? Let's fast forward to, let's talk about the Saw Gerrera stuff, because that was a cool thing. And there's another thing I want to debunk that I've been seeing on the internet. The kids in that scene, when they go to Alderaan, there are a few children in the crowd, and there's a lot of people on the internet saying that, oh, Jen Erso and some others are in there. And that's not the case. It's way too early in this in the franchise for that to even have. Jen Erso is not with Saul yet. One, I gotta remind everybody, Saul was bald by the time he showed up in Rogue One to take Jen Erso. This is the time period where the Catalyst novel is taking place, so Galen is still actually working on the super weapon, and you know, Jen is actually probably on Coruscant with her family. Like, none of that has happened yet. Like, I want to say that's like 10 or 11 years before the Battle of Yavin, that Jen takes his not Jen, but Galen goes into exile with his family, and then because she's got to be like 9 or 10 when Saul comes to get her, and then she spends 5 to 6 years with the Partisans, because she's like 15 or 16 years old when Saul abandons her, and then she's on her own from 16 to whatever, or she's got to be like 19, 20 in Rogue One. So She was with the partisans for 5 years, and then she's on her own for 5 years, and then we see her in Rogue One. So yeah, she's not she's not in that crowd. Uh, Sorry to disappoint and sorry to debunk everyone who was thinking that, but no, she was not there. But Saul's appearance, I think he's going to play a pivotal role, and I think he's going to be a reoccurring character in this series, as well as Rex. But I think Saul more than Rex is. It could be, I don't know. There could be a balance of the two. I think they'll both be reappearing. Probably, maybe. Okay, let me take that back. Rex and Saul will probably appear a lot in this first season, but if they have a second season, I would wager that we'd see Saul more than we see Rex, because I have a feeling that we're going to get the Bad Batch. They're going to become more attached to the partisans, being that they're now on the run from the Empire. I think we'll see them aligning themselves more with Saw Gerrera and his partisans more so than Rex, who may be doing his own thing right now. Like, Rex may team up with them at some point. Well, I don't know. That's kind of interesting because I didn't seem like, I'm now thinking about Rebels, right? So when we see Saul in Rebels, when he's interacting with Rex is with them when they go to Geonosis, is he not? Am I remembering that correctly? Because if Rex is with Saul, it doesn't. Is on, or maybe he's not. He's around though, but if Rex is with Saw Gerrera, like, there was no interaction or indication that they had any type of interaction prior to that meeting in Rebels. So they would be kind of sort of softly retconning that. It's not the biggest of deals, but that would be kind of sort of a retcon. You know what I'm saying? If they were on, I feel like they were on Geonosis together though. I think so too. I think he is with Cut. Yeah, I think that's where they're going to L19. I think that's where Cut is. I agree with that. I would say that it would make sense that Rex is with Cut, and then when they go to L19, yeah, Rex will be there. That just makes perfect sense to me, Park. So yeah, so I mean that's, yeah, Rex is like, what the hell happened to you? So yeah, I would say that would be interesting. Cad, what's going on? No need to apologize, man. Welcome back. We hadn't had too much to talk about really as far as Star Wars goes, so welcome back to the stream. I'm happy that we can get back to having some regularly scheduled programming with Star Wars back in the main picture. This was a great episode. Let me know what you all thought about the episode. Would you rank this episode on a scale of 1 to 10? Let me know in the comment section. But yeah, so yeah, we're definitely going to see Cut and probably Rex in the next episode, which is going to be exciting. I think from the promo we saw some images of Rex, Saul, and the Bad Batch on another planet, and maybe that's episode 2. Like, I know they'll have to have some sort of mission to go on once they've gotten to J19, because there's some other things that they're going to need to do. I would like for this episode, or not this episode, but this series to tie into Andor in some ways, and also to tie into Kenobi. I think I remember seeing something that, Kenobi is supposed to appear in Andor. I think that's the rumor. That, Obi-Wan in some way or fashion is going to pop up in the Andor series. He may be a recurring character. I could totally see Obi-Wan. Well, do we know if Bail Organa is going to be in Andor? Never mind. Let's talk about that on Sunday. Let's get back on the Bad Batch episode real quick because I'm deviating. Yeah, I'll save that for the Sunday show. But yeah, let's get back on track with this episode. coming from Ultimate Clone Wars fan. 8.5. I agree with that. 8.5. My mom says 8.75. I agree with that. I can see that. I think everybody's in a 8 or higher. Man, this was a really strong episode. I think even for fans who aren't, watching the Clone Wars, like my mom, for instance, I know she hadn't seen the Clone Wars and she hadn't seen Rebels, and for her to, watch this episode and give it like an 8.75 out of 10 means that it's just a well-written episode, and that's a credit to the creators because they've made it easy to follow along. You don't have to be up on everything to know what's happening in this show. Okay, we're speculating now. I think I saw someone say that the that Crosshair is going to be the first, or is the first, Death Trooper, which I like that theory. Actually, I think he would be. It would actually make sense if he is the one who creates the Death Trooper program and trains the soldiers as Death Troopers. And that would be an interesting. That's the way they keep the character alive if they didn't want to kill him. But Park says that he's going to die midway through. Cody takes up the position as the elite squad leader. I could see that. That's not a bad theory either. I hope we see Commander Cody in this. He should. I hope we see Commander Cody in the Kenobi series in some capacity, because I think that would be an interesting interaction between him and Obi-Wan, given that he gave Obi-Wan that cheap shot at the end of Return of the or during Order 66 as he was making his escape. But yeah, let's see, where are we in this? So Onderon, so they go back to the Kamino. So when they get captured, of course they escape with the help of Omega. That was all cool. But that last sequence, so this is where I'm going back a little bit to Omega and my theory about her being just having a high level of perception, either that being by way of the Force or some genetic modification. I think it's almost like she has a heightened level of perception, and she can also adapt to situations. Her saying that she's never handled a blaster before, yet she's able to like hit like a very advanced skill shot to knock the sniper out of Crosshair's hands. I mean, that's very impressive. Like, not every it's very few, but some marksmen that are going to be able to make a shot like that. So I think that's a part of I just feel like that's just a part of the genetic modification of her. And being that Shakti is on the planet, if they had created some sort of force sensitive clone, I think it would be kind of hard for Shakti not to sense another force sensitive being on the planet, being that, from what I know, Shakti is the only Jedi and the only force sensitive on Kamino. And if there's another force sensitive in the facility, being Omega, I find it hard to believe that she would not be able to sense her and to sense her presence. They have a way, Jedi, they can sense the, other force sensitive beings, especially if they're in the presence or the vicinity of another one. So they would have to explain that, being that Kamino is Shakti's main station. Omega seems like she's about, how old do you think Omega is? Like 10, 9 or 10. So she's been there. She would have had to have been there, throughout the course of the Clone Wars, unless she's age accelerated as well. But even still, like, the age acceleration makes them half-life, so they age, twice as fast. So let's say she's 8 or 9, she would still be like, yeah, she would still have to have been on Kamino throughout the duration of the Clone Wars almost. Like, there's no way they would have aged her up that quickly in such a short time period. The Clone Wars is only 3 years long, so like, how long has she been on Kamino? How long has she been active if she's force sensitive? why didn't Shakti ever censor? And if she did, why was that not mentioned? So I think her being force sensitive creates a couple plot holes that they have to explain. Not that they couldn't find ways to, make that make sense. But I think it's easier to say that no, she's just, genetically enhanced to have certain abilities and to be able to perceive or to adapt to certain situations quicker than the average person. That's much easier, in my opinion, from a storytelling standpoint, to explain than her being force sensitive and them being able to create force sensitive beings. Because, I mean, even too, if that's the case, if they can create force sensitive beings on Kamino, then they should have been able to create a force sensitive for Palpatine. If we're talking about the sequel, getting into the sequel trilogy territory, like Kamino, the Kaminoans, we know the Empire kept some sort of connection or relationship with the Kaminoans, because in the Mandalorian we see the Kaminoan scientist helping the Moff Gideon and his Imperial remnant. Now, it could be a situation where the Empire takes control of Kamino and its facilities from the Kaminoans and knows, now it's all pretty much Imperial officers that are running the facility by the time of the Mandalorian. But you would still have to, and they could do it in the series, but they would have to explain why they weren't able to successfully create another force sensitive clone if Omega is indeed force sensitive. So that's kind of sort of my theory. Not to say that that's not a thing that can be explained throughout the series, but that's quite a task. That's quite a feat to perform. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but I think for the sake of the story, the easiest thing to say is she's just a genetically modified clone that has heightened levels of perception that would make her, a very, dangerous soldier if that is what she becomes. Definitely an elite soldier, an elite fighting force, if you will. Where are we on time? 43 minutes. Q&A. Do y'all want to do Q&A? Any questions you got in the chat? Any things you want me to address? Because I think I pretty much covered everything that I want to say for the episode. But I would definitely love to talk to you guys more about it. See, get some comments here. I enjoyed it. Held my attention. It was good. Ready for the next episode. Saw nothing wrong with it. Gave it a 10. All right, we got our first 10. No, Whitney also gave it a 10, if she's still watching. So we got 2 10s in the chat. An elite squad is supposed to be in Kenobi as well. So, okay, so now if an elite squad is supposed to be in Kenobi, is that elite squad going to be Death Troopers, or could we see was it Echo Squadron? Or Delta Squadron, excuse me, not Echo Squadron, Delta Squadron. The that could be a thing. Did I see an animation of Delta Squad? Or am I making that up? I would like to see Delta Squad, that's for sure. Seeing Delta Squad appear in this series or another series would be awesome. And have Delta Squad serve the Empire, especially early on. That could be interesting. Or maybe maybe Crosshair can start a task force. No, never mind, because Delta Squad is actually, they are canon. That whole force is a canon. I think wasn't well, no, that's not true. I had a thought, but no, that's not true. Yeah, let's see. Looking at my chat here. Scroll up because I think I missed some comments. Yeah, I hope they bring the same level of intensity in the next episode. I thought that the pacing in season 3 and 4 of Rebels was great, and I hope they can keep that. They've learned, and Dave Filoni can keep that intensity and pace that those last 2 seasons in Rebels had. I like Rebels from start to finish. I like Rebels as a complete series more than I did the Clone Wars up until season 7 of the Clone Wars, where I think season 7 kind of stole Rebels Thunder a little bit for me, just because it was just brilliantly executed. And I think it's just a result of trial and error, and now at the conclusion of 6 seasons of the Clone Wars and 4 seasons of Rebels, I think they kind of figured out, Dave Filoni and team figured out what the right pacing and tone and balancing the drama and levity and the lightheartedness of these shows. It's like he found that perfect balance for me in season 3 and 4, and then he also continued that in season 7. I think season 7 was actually like almost perfect. I know a lot of people don't have a fondness for who are the sisters in the middle, in those 2 acts with Ahsoka, when we're introduced to Ahsoka again in season 7. I know a lot of people aren't fond of the Martez sisters. I believe that's what they were named. But I didn't mind it. I felt like it was just a way to reintroduce the character of Ahsoka and to give us a perspective of regular people and how they view the Jedi and the Jedi Order. And a lot of their concerns aligned with Ahsoka's concerns, which is why it made sense for them to kind of sort of interact with one another, the Force bringing them together. And I think it was important for Ahsoka to know, to hear from regular people that her sentiments about the Jedi Order were correct, and they were going down the wrong path. It validated, in my opinion, the way I interpreted it, it's like it validated her leaving the Order, which I think was important for her character in that moment, in that time period, which gave her another level of confidence once Bo-Katan comes in, and then we get that amazing 4-episode movie with the Siege of Mandalore. But yeah, I think this show in this episode continued that pace and that tone that we got in that last arc, in the Siege of Mandalore arc from season 7. And I hope that they continue that tone and that pacing and that just, storytelling overall as this show progresses. I hope we get more interesting and dynamic characters, cameos from characters that we haven't seen in a while. I think we'll see a lot more characters from the Clone Wars that kind of sort of had open-ended endings. Do you all know, are we going to get Ahsoka in this show at some point? I know so here's the thing about an Ahsoka appearance. If they make an Ahsoka appearance, right, she cannot interact with Rex. And I think they can do that without Ahsoka. Yeah, there's definitely a way to do that, because I don't think Ahsoka is going to be with the Bad Batch the entire time. I think there's a possibility for her to interact with the Bad Batch in some form or fashion, absent of Rex, and them not have a conversation about Rex or his whereabouts, because they had kind of fallen out of contact at some point. And maybe, well, they don't really, do they say, they don't say definitively when they lost contact. It is implied in season 7 that last we they saw each other was when they parted ways at the wreckage of the battlecruiser at the Venator. But that doesn't necessarily mean that is the last time they saw each other. Like, they could have seen each other one more time in this time period, and then after that they lose contact. But I don't know, we'll see. It's Dave Filoni is running the show, so it would be kind of odd if we don't see Ahsoka appear. Like, him pulling Ahsoka into The Mandalorian for me is proof that yeah, we'll probably see Ahsoka in anything that Dave Filoni is involved with. Like it's just like they go hand in hand. So, and it's not a bad thing for me. I love the character of Ahsoka. So if we can get her and see an appearance of her, you know, that would be awesome. Especially with the rumors her appearing in the Kenobi show as well. So yeah, that's that. All right, I think I'm gonna call this now. Normis Nerds, what's happening? Thank you for joining. Make sure you leave a like if you haven't. We do have a Discord over at Certified Gumbo. I'm going to drop a link. Definitely love if you haven't joined our Discord to do that. I'm going to put a link into the chat right now. Join us. Let's have these conversations. Just continue this conversation offline. I'd like to talk to y'all. A lot of y'all came over from the Den and from Everyday Geeks. So shout out to the Den of Nerds and to Everyday Geeks as well. Go check them out. Yeah, I'll see you guys Friday at, I think I'll do 7 p.m. How's 8 p.m. for y'all? Starting time. I can do 7 or 8 p.m. on Friday. Either way, I'll make that call. But yeah, so we'll do another review of this on this Friday here on this channel, 8 p.m. Eastern or 7 o'clock, depending on how I feel. And then Saturday, of course, we're going to have, Certified Gumbo will be back with our cookout show. And we will be continuing our ranking of the Marvel movies. We've got to rank the Sony stuff now. We've done the MCU movies. We've already ranked them. We've ranked the Fox movies. And we've got now to do the Sony movies and then everything else that isn't in those previously mentioned categories. And then we'll be able to rank each of these categories to figure out what is the overall ranking of all of these Marvel comic book movies. So definitely, tune in for that Saturday if you're interested. We definitely would like to hear from you guys how we're ranking these things. We do this live, which makes it entertaining. And then on Sunday, I'll be back with Star Wars Sundays, and we're going to speculate a little bit about, episode 3 of the Bad Batch, probably, Kenobi, and Andor, probably. I'd like to speculate a little bit with 2 episodes of the Bad Batch behind us on where the future of, the Bad Batch is going, also where Andor and Kenobi could potentially go and how all of that could be connected, because one thing about the Star Wars franchise is we have a level of continuity that is why they kind of sort of made everything, they made the Legends play and then they switched everything to canon so they could pull things, but it's primarily so they could create a level of continuity in these stories where everything would tie together. So there are going to be connections to Kenobi and Andor and the Bad Batch. They all take place during the time period. So let's speculate on Sunday what those connections and tie-ins will be. I think we can make a lot of inferences with 2 episodes of the Bad Batch behind us. And so yeah, thank you all for tuning in. And as I always say, peace, love, blessings, and may the force be with you always.